love to move. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion, but I like to move, and I have experience with it because I've moved 9 times. There's something about the liminal in-between space that excites me. I'm off on a new journey. Maybe I'll be a new person. Me, but better. And as I pack, I tend to get rid of bags and bags of stuff. The idea of traveling with a lighter load feels refreshing. I want a clean slate. And for a few weeks, I'm a minimalist, and it feels really good. But let's recall how many times I've done this. 9. 9 times I've moved. 9 times I've attempted to get rid of stuff. But once I've been in the new place for a couple months, maybe you have this experience too, the newness wears off and I catch up with myself. And I realize I'm the same person with the same old habits. Less stuff maybe for a couple months, but no real change. But every time I move, I get a small taste of freedom. I think that's why I crave it. One might say I'm maybe addicted to moving. I think I've diagnosed myself right now. I'm trying to let go of a place I've called home. I'm trying to let go of an old version of myself, and I symbolize that by letting go of my things. But as I reflect, I think I just love the idea of being free from my stuff. I love the idea of a clean slate, of a new life. But how possible is it that I could actually leave it all behind for good? Am I willing to live a radically changed life? And in the text today, doesn't Jesus literally say that's what I have to do in order to acquire eternal life? So let's imagine the story. Jesus gets up, puts his sandals on, and continues on the journey to Jerusalem, where he will soon meet the cross. He's not even out of town yet when some guy not walks but runs up to him and kneels in front of him, a worshipful stance. And this guy, I see him as earnest and eager, and he clearly admires Jesus. And he says to him, "Good teacher, what must I do? What must I do to acquire eternal life, this thing that you're promising us?" And Jesus' first response is, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone." It's kind of a strange response, but I think that Jesus is not cutting himself down by saying, "Why do you call me good?" but rather pointing out that he's not alone. He was sent by the very source of goodness itself. And he's pointing out, I think, that already the man might not know what he's saying. Because the man wants to know also what he has to do to acquire eternal life, what he has to do. And Jesus tells him, well, you know what not to do, and he lists off some of those commandments. But the man isn't satisfied. He's followed all the rules his whole life, and he makes sure that Jesus knows this. I've done what you've told me to do. I'm a good person. And my favorite part is that Jesus looks at him and loves him. None of this is said out of anger, but out of love. And I think that Jesus finds his effort endearing. And Jesus tells him the hard truth, I think because he loves him. And that hard truth is that you lack something. You lack one thing. Your one thing is your wealth, your possessions. Once you sell them and give your money to the poor, then you can follow me. Following the rules isn't enough. Being a good person isn't enough. And the man is full of sorrow, and he walks away grieving because he has many possessions. And Mark hits us with this vital detail only at the end of their encounter. Possessions are his personal barrier. They are what he's not willing to lose. Does that mean he's out of the running for Christ's promise? Does that mean I'm out of the running for Christ's promise? So I once read a story about a 34-year-old international aid worker who read this passage, Mark, and decided that he would, this is a true story, he would put up every single item in his house for auction. He felt very convicted by this passage. It cut right to the heart, like in Hebrews. And what people didn't buy, he set up in a gallery space and continued to sell. He emptied his bank account and gave it all, along with the proceeds from the sale, to charity. And the little bit left over he gave to the Salvation Army. Once he was emptied from every last material possession, he had his first solo art show, in which he challenged the right to retain wealth when you are faced with extreme poverty. And in the weeks following, he stuck to it. He slept on a beach towel on the ground. But slowly, the people who loved him started to try to help. His friend lent him a blow-up mattress to bring home after a camping trip. And the couple who had bought his bed at the auction moved and just gave it back to him. His mom gave him an old phone from the junk drawer so that they could call him. And he realized that his art show, his solo art show, wasn't so solo after all. In order to sell everything, people had needed to buy everything. People were involved. And those who realized the irony of the situation began to get crafty. Over the holidays, he opened up presents to find his own possessions gifted back to him. But he resisted the help the whole way. He told them he would not accept shelter or food. He was ready to sleep on the street just for the principle of the thing. But he began to think after a while, are my self-imposed rules getting in the way of the point? He didn't feel closer to God. What's the use of rules if they are getting in the way of my accepting and giving love? He realized that the whole thing had only worked because others had helped him move his things to the warehouse and then bought them. Maybe the point wasn't poverty, of emptying oneself of all possessions and as a result getting closer to God. Maybe it was about a life that was changed by relationships, by solidarity and generosity and love, by allowing oneself to be helped, to be supported in a time of need. He was willing to lose every last possession, but he realized what was harder was allowing himself to lose control, to let others help him and support him, to depend on other people. And the story makes me think of the rich man in the text. Following the rules wasn't doing it for him either. He was still anxious about his salvation. He wanted to know how to get eternal life. And following the rules was about what he had to do. It all fell on him. That's a lot of pressure, and I think I'd be anxious too if it all fell on me, what I had to do in order to receive Christ's promise. And in the book of Mark, the opposite of faith isn't disbelief, it's fear. And the man was afraid because he was living in a world of rules, and eternal life was on the line. It was a lot of pressure, but it's clear that Jesus wasn't angry at the man for his distorted thinking. In fact, he loved him. In fact, this is the only time in the book of Mark that it's stated that Jesus loved someone in particular. This wealthy man who seems to be really trying, who probably wasn't even aware of his misguided effort. Jesus loved him and told him that he lacked one thing, and it was the one thing that the man couldn't let go of, the one thing that he couldn't lose. Because he worked his whole life doing the right things. And he earned everything from that. Traditional Jewish piety would have seen wealth as a blessing from God, a sign of divine favor. Following the commandments was supposed to lead to prosperity. But Jesus turns everything upside down like he did. He came in and stirred the pot. And he says that he doesn't say that rules are bad or wrong and that following them is wrong. But he tells us that life is about more than following the rules. It's about giving up everything you've come to live for, everything you've worked hard for, and living for Jesus instead. And he's saying that you do that through service to other people, especially to those on the margins of society. Through giving, through relationships. That is how you will love me, by loving other people. Jesus is inviting the man into love. And the man couldn't trust Jesus' promise of abundant life, because that would be letting go of the breath. That was scary, and he was afraid of what he had to lose, and afraid of how difficult communal living would be when he had to give up everything and rely on other people. So maybe I don't have to give up every last possession. Maybe I don't have to move all the time. Maybe it's just about throwing out the rules and instead looking to the people around me and asking myself, what do I need to lose in order to better serve and love those in my community and be loved in return? And trusting that even when it's difficult and my life is changing and it's scary, I will receive a life more abundant and full and rich, no pun intended, than I ever dreamed possible. Letting go of that breath, I might get an even deeper breath in return. So what's that one thing that we are not willing to lose? The one thing that's getting in the way of truly trusting the Lord's grace? Like the rich man, are we not willing to lose our independence? If the rich man had stayed and let go of his comfortable life, he would have had to depend on others for the first time. He would have had to look hardship in the face. Are we afraid to let go of that independence? We don't want to have to depend on our loved ones. We want to be the ones that have it together. We want to be in control of our life. We dictate our time and our energy. But what if we lived open to the needs around us and open to letting others help us in our need? Maybe we need to leave some extra room in our planners. Maybe it's our time that we need to lose, so that when our neighbor calls us to pick up their kid from school, we have the time. Maybe we need to stop trying to go it alone and ask our friend or partner to make us dinner after a busy day when we couldn't find time to eat. Or what if we needed to let go of our image? Our insistence on pretending like everything is okay, that we are okay. What if we are called to tell our good friend at church who sits 3 rows away that we are grieving and our family feels like it's falling apart? And I see us doing that today. Risking vulnerability and depending on others for support.